Okay, hi everyone. So this week is all about a call to action looking at the year of 2014 with a focus on the Adani movement, the hashtag Stop Adani movement, which is a digital campaign as well as a physical campaign. So the Stop Adani movement looks at the National Day of Protest that happened in 2014, which protests the development of the Carmichael coal mine. The Carmichael coal mine is one of the largest kind of untapped coal resources in central to northern Queensland. There's a lot of very interesting literature, media sources and debate about opening Carmichael. One of the most kind of pertinent issues about Carmichael is that it is privately owned. And whilst it was said that there would be lots of jobs offered to the Queensland economy, which they desperately needed at that point in time, and a lot of the Queensland economy is based on mining and resources, there wasn't going to be as much for Australian domestic workers as it was for international workers. So it's disputed and contested. It's a very complex issue, the Carmichael coal mine and Stop Adani, which kind of came out of that activism campaign. I think Stop Adani as well, it's been going on since 2014. It really awakened Australia's environmental consciousness and people kind of really started to think about coal seam gas. They started to think about the use of, say, iron ore mining in the Pilbara, all different sorts of mining and what that kind of did to the planet and what that did to Australia's what that does for Australia on the world stage. So you'll be looking at this through the Australian context. There's also a really interesting thing about Rolf Harris, so you can kind of gives you more context by focusing on these popular culture or criminal kind of events. So Rolf Harris was found guilty of indecently assaulting 4 girls between 1968 and 1986, and that looks at the global context as well and looks at the Occupy movement in Hong Kong. This interesting video on YouTube looking at 50 years of environmental action in Australia, which is quite interesting. I think the Buy Back the Backyard movement from the early 70s is a very fascinating one if you'd like to have a look into that, which is an extra kind of, it was an initiative from the Whitlam government in the early 70s where they wanted to buy back parts of the Northern Territory and Northern Western Australia because they'd sold it privately off. So there's lots of issues there. But I'd love to hear what you all have to say about this. The question is that one can argue that for all its campaigning, national days of action, we've just had one as well. We've had the Women's March, nationwide rallies and media attention. The Stop Adani movement was futile in preventing the Adani coal mine, Carmichael, from moving forward with the Carmichael coal mine. Is the Stop Adani movement simply the biggest example of every other environmental movement that has failed before it? That's a pretty big question, but please bring examples into it. It'd be interesting if we had a more of a historical kind of focus on this. And if someone mentioned the Buy Back the Backyard campaign from the early 70s and linked it to the Stop Adani thing, that would be fantastic. Okay, cool. Looking forward to seeing what you all have.